Hi, this is Vessel from onyourweather.com, and in this video we're discussing or trying to answer the question how far ahead you can forecast the weather. So the reason I'm doing this video and trying to answer this question is partly because a lot of people have been asking that question lately, and also a few years ago a very popular weather site started issuing 90-day weather forecasts. Now, anyone familiar with weather patterns, weather behavior, and moving around in meteorological circles will know that this is impossible. With the technology we currently at, even with future technologies, due to the variable conditions of the atmosphere and how quickly it will change, it's just simply impossible, but we'll get to that later on. So, how far ahead can we forecast the weather? Most meteorologists agree that we can, with a fair amount of certainty, forecast weather up to 5 days in advance. Maybe stretch it to a week. 10-day weather forecast is a bit of a stretch with a little bit of educated guessing, but you can still ballpark-wise make some kind of prediction. But 90-day forecast is just simply impossible. So what we're going to do now is just have a look at why 5-day weather forecasts are so accurate, why they are so accurate compared to 20-30 years ago, what caused that and what advancements has been made to make that possible. And then we are also going to have to look at why a 90-day forecast is next to impossible. So first let's have a look at why a 5-day forecast, or let's make it a 5 to 7 day forecast, why that is so possible and so accurate compared to 20-30 years ago. Well, we're looking at first advancements in technology, also a lot more historical data that we have access to than in the past, a lot more weather sensors, and a lot more computing power. So let's just have a look at that list. When it comes to technological advances, it's quite simple. The newer, more advanced, more accurate, more powerful a piece of technology is, the better result. That applies to weather satellites that's constantly being put into the atmosphere, remote and manned weather stations, weather balloons, and even weather buoys that's being placed in our oceans and lakes. So that is constantly improving, making forecasting that much more accurate. Same with more historical data. More historical data are being added on a daily basis. Not just current historical data, but past historical data. Data before everything got digitized. During previous centuries, especially during the mid to late 20th century, everything that was still manually recorded are now being added to the database of atmospheric conditions that's being used in forecasting models, making your forecasting that much more accurate. An increasing number of global weather stations and sensors are being rolled out constantly. So the more stations, the more sensors you have, both on Earth, in our oceans, and in the sky, the more accurate forecasting are going to be. And the same also applies to computing power. I think it's fair to say that we probably will never have enough computing power. You probably heard that the cell phones we use today are more powerful than the computers they used in the 1960s and 70s to send the astronauts into space during the Apollo missions. Well, that's still not nearly enough to even start processing all the atmospheric conditions and data that's pouring into weather service stations on a daily basis. Even though modern supercomputers are able to perform functions of up to 2.89 quadrillion instructions per second. Now you can Google for yourself how much that exactly that is. That's a fair amount. Even that is not enough to actually do the calculations or the forecast that meteorologists want, but that's what we have currently. And even those computers take up the size of a small concert hall. So as processing power continues to improve and get better, your forecast will continue to improve as well. Okay, so these are some of the factors that helps to make 5-day weather forecasts as accurate as they are today. But then why are 90-day weather forecasts so unrealistic, and why can't they be as accurate? Well, let's look at a couple of reasons. Fast changing atmospheric conditions. We all know how quickly the weather can change, specifically when you look at temperature and wind. The smallest variation in your upper atmospheric jet streams can have a major impact on atmospheric conditions. The same with clouds. They can even affect the amount of radiation that is let through, that causes changes in temperature and wind movement. Changes on the Earth's surface as well. The speed at which the ocean warms or cools down, same with the land. As much as it cools down or slows down, which might vary from what's being predicted, can have a significant influence on forecasting. Also, we're looking at two different global forecasting models, the European model as well as the American model. Now, mostly these two models agree, but when it comes to long-term forecasting, they can start deviating a lot. You might have heard of them with major weather events like hurricanes are being tracked. During meteorological forecasts, they would say that it's tracking in a certain direction according to the European model, or it's tracking in a different direction according to the American model. Now, these are small changes, but over the long term they can have a significant impact. Climate change also throws a bit of a spanner in the works. It's now introducing some weather events that's not expected at all, like cold spells, heat waves that never occurred before in places where it was expected or not expected, and that makes long-term forecasting even that much more difficult. Okay, so at this point you might wonder to yourself, okay, these variable changes in atmospheric conditions, temperature, ocean currents, even the way the Earth's surface behave, these are relatively minor changes in conditions, so why would that have such a big impact on forecasts, especially long-term forecasts? You might have heard about the butterfly effect, but what you probably don't know is that the butterfly effect has its origin in meteorology. Meteorologist Edward Lorenz is responsible for the butterfly effect. He was interested from an early age at weather and changes in weather conditions, forecasting, and he continued as a forecaster during the Second World War for the American services. He continued his experiments after that, and in 1961 he used a primitive computer to do experiments with forecasting. During this period he did an experiment where he didn't want to start from the beginning, so he shortened an abbreviation or a post-decimal number of 0.506127 to just 0.506. In other words, the 0.00127 was left out. But that small amount resulted in a vastly different weather forecast. In fact, once those calculations ran their course, the two forecasts from the two different figures was so different that the two weather conditions couldn't even start to be compared. And that 0.00127 difference can be seen as a small, very, very small breath of air, similar to the butterfly flapping its wings. And that's what made him conclude that a butterfly flapping its wings in Brazil can lead to a tornado in Texas. Now, as highly improbable as that may sound, that's actually fairly accurate. And today we use even smaller margins to do calculations. But if such a small, insignificant looking difference can have such a large impact over such a short period of time, imagine what changes can take place over a 90-day period. So, as you can clearly see, a 90-day forecast is just simply impossible. The goal of this whole video was not to discredit anything or any kind of forecasting system or model. It was just to give you an accurate or more fair, realistic indication of how far into the future you can forecast the weather. So with current technological advancements and the amount of sensor arrays, as well as historical data we've got, we can accurately forecast the weather up to 5-7 days in advance. But that's where our limitations are. It would have been great, especially if we're planning a trip overseas, vacation, maybe a business trip. It would have been wonderful to be able to forecast the weather 30 days to 90 days in advance. It's just simply not possible, and I don't see that happening in the near future as well. So I hope that cleared up any confusion. I hope that it has been helpful. If you have any more questions or anything in this video has been unclear, I'm leaving a link to the full article that I've written about this in the description below this video. So You can always go and read the full article if you need some more information and a little bit more facts as well. If you want to be reminded of upcoming videos about certain weather phenomena, different weather conditions, how they occur, what the characteristics are, you can hit the subscribe button as well as the notification button next to it, and as soon as another video gets released, you'll be reminded, or you'll be notified immediately. So like I said, I hope this has been helpful. This video has basically just been to clear up any confusion and put the record straight. So hope you enjoyed it. I'll see you in the next video. Until next time, keep your eye on the weather. Cheers.